I have not been there, but I want to. Let's open in prayer. Let's pray. Great and loving God, we thank you for this night, this time to come together. We thank you for the rain that has fallen, the chance to gather in your name, to talk about what it is to live together as your children, and to be reminded again and again of how blessed we are. Remind us each time we gather of who we are and whose we are so that we can do the same for others. In your name we pray. Amen. All right, welcome. Good evening. Week 2 of our look through Braided. Hopefully by now you have had homework and you have completed your homework baking your first sets of bread. If you didn't do it, we're not going to shame you right now. I'm going to shame you from the pulpit on Sunday. And so, no, I'm kidding. If you didn't do it, let me encourage you to do. Those who did, thoughts. What was it like? How did it turn out? Walk me through the process. Yes. You loved it. Tell me more. What did you love about it? Okay. Okay. So the instructions were clear. That was a good thing. As she says in the book, it's for a mommy and me class. So the instructions are going to be simple, right? And straight off the bat, you got to experience the benefit of doing it in community. And there's something cool about that too, right? I mean, that's a neat process. Other thoughts? Yep. Yes. But the bread was dry. So yeah, but what was that like to have to sit and just be and watch through that whole process? Yep. Yes. And it's kind of like, she talks about it in here, a gift to yourself. I can remember the first couple times I tried it during the process, and especially as it's rising and doing other things, I'd be like, all right, I have to fill this time. And I can remember getting to the point where I don't have to fill this time. And there was just something wonderful about just sitting and experiencing the process. That this time was filled with what I was doing. It didn't need to be filled with something else. What else? Other thoughts about the process? About your bake? So it was, yes, Paula. Okay. So the kneading was a form of prayer, and she talked about that in the book as well, right? So there's something, there's something tactile about it, and it's a different form of prayer for most of us. Yes. The not having control is a weird thing, especially for most of us who are used to controlling what we want to control, or at least having the illusion that we're controlling what we want to control. The idea of making it in the words that she uses in the merit of someone, and I like that word merit. When you hear, because the word I use is honor. When you hear the word merit, what does that mean to you? What comes up in your mind? So you use it as synonyms, merit and honor. Okay? Anybody else? Merit to me seems, go ahead.
Speak about merit. My biggest surprise was we gave half of it to the neighbor. Who's a good friend, watches our house for us while we're, and I told him, how come you make Kellogg bread?
Yeah.
And I said, that's the biggest grinning.
So part of the surprise is the mission component of it and actually taking it to someone else and seeing their reaction, but also seeing their recognition, right? I mean, it's okay. There's a part of your life that I don't know anything about because at least in your case, the person knew exactly what the bread was. And so, the beautiful thing about that is we then get to ask another their story. Tell me how you know about this bread. Tell me your experience with this bread. And who knows where that conversation is going.
We'll have to continue because I have time. Thanks.
So the gist, at least from this part, is we'll have to continue the conversation. And the answer to that is yes, right? We're constantly continuing the conversation because the beautiful thing is this is a relational thing between us and our Creator, but also those with whom we are connected, those with whom we bake, but also the knowledge that there's a community of our church now that's doing this at least for the next 5 weeks. And so we are connected even if we're not baking in the same place. But we're also connected to an entire community who does this as a religious thing every week. And so as we are doing this, we're participating with our Jewish brothers and sisters in something that is spiritual for them. The hope is that as we do that, there is a sense of connection with part of our heritage that we don't feel normally. Who knows what could spring from that? Right? Let's go back to merit. How does that word register in your mind? It's positive? Mary? There's a deserving on their behalf, right? It's the acknowledgement that something is different about this particular person. And so it's interesting to me that as I hear her talk about it, when she uses the word merit, most of the time I use the word honor. And when I hear her do it, and part of it could be her cadence and part of it the way she says it, but it takes on a higher meaning to me as I hear her say it. And when I'm at my best and I get to that point, the word I use is merit and not honor. But if I'm not thinking about it in the moment, if I'm not present, as she talks about in the book, right, I'll slip and so I'll miss out a little bit on that step. Anyone have a bad experience? Or bad's the wrong word. Anyone have not the experience that they're hoping for this week? Okay, Debbie, say more. Okay, problem with the yeast. So it wasn't that you had a problem with the yeast, it was Ron. Ron screwed up, he got the wrong yeast. It's definitely his fault, we get it. Yes. Okay. So yeah, with the wrong yeast, or if you kill the yeast, shockingly, it will not rise. So just a tip for someone who is not a professional baker, if you don't see the cool science experiment in whatever glass you use, start that again. Because everything else you do will be important, the kneading, you'll experience the prayer of it, all of that stuff, but you're not going to have bread that rises. I've learned that too. Okay. Yeah, so when you have so much on your hands as you're kneading, what's the cure for that? More flour. So make sure you have flour in the bowl, you have flour down as well. That's another one of those things. All right, you might have to do it 2 or 3 times to figure that out. Because as I was telling y'all, I watched a virtual thing and I'm watching her do it, and she's got nothing on her hands. And I look like I'm laying brick. And I'm like, okay, what's the difference? Because I can make a loaf out of what's left over on my fingers, But I realized it was more flour, and so as I started doing that, it got better and better. Pam, you were looking forward to doing something different this week moment. Okay, best story ever. The neighbor is not there to receive the gift. That is awesome. That is awesome. So, who else found the experience, at least initially, stressful? Okay, Sue, talk to me about that. Why was it stressful? So the patience is hard. And so part of my hope and part of my prayer for you is that if you keep doing it, it will become less stressful. I told y'all a little bit last week about, my first couple of experiences and how I was so caught up in making the bread and making it right and all of those things that for me it was incredibly stressful. So if she's listening, she's not going to like the story. So I've done 4 of the virtual bakings with her. The second one, she's walking through the process. She's got everything out, and she's making her yeast. And so instead of putting sugar into the yeast mix, she put salt, which kills the yeast. And so she's talking, and then a light bulb goes off. She knows what she has done, throws it away. And, so there's people throughout the whole world who are watching with this, and she's the expert. So she is mortified, and she and I are talking about this afterwards. She is mortified and just sure that she has looked like a fool. Here I am, the expert, and I've screwed up the bread. I told her that was the best part about the virtual bake for me because it allowed me to relax. And it allowed me to, in her words in the beginning, to be present in the moment. And it was beautiful for me because all of my anxiety in the moment was gone. And what I said to her is, you don't know how much for me personally that was a gift. Because that allowed me to just get out of my own stuff and make the bread. And so, I don't know what for those who had a stressful experience, I don't know what those moments will be for you, but I hope you experience them because, again, there's something, at least for me, incredibly enriching about the process. Judy. Sure. Yeah, so the question is, do I really just sit there? Some of us are more spiritual than others. Some of us have a better connection to God and we're more in tune with our holiness and our needs. So no, I mean, it depends on the moment, right? And there are some weeks when, yes, I'm completely present and I'm sitting in silence. I'm outside with the dogs, just enjoying creation. Sometimes I'm doing laundry, right? It just depends in the moment. And so but my countenance going into that allows me to dictate what this time is going to be. And so when I am present, again, to use her words, that time is more fruitful for me. Sure. So the words coming out of her mouth right there, I was fine with what I did. The answer is yes. I mean, this is a spiritual thing, and what feeds you spiritually may not feed me spiritually. And so what that might have been is, I can't leave because my bread is, so I've got to get these things done so I can be a better this, a better that, so I can do whatever. I mean, that's the beauty of spirituality. And so, this is an opportunity to gift yourself with a chance to focus yourself, focus your time, and who knows what comes from that. Mick.
I thought the most philosophical thing in that whole 50 pages was just because it comes out wrong doesn't make it wrong.
Yep.
I thought that was brilliant. It's on the back of pickup trucks, and I won't say it here, but I think that allows you not to feel beat up just because something happens. That really you had because sometimes it's her fault, she used her own salt, right?
Yep. Yeah, sometimes just because it comes out wrong or not the way you wanted, it doesn't mean you screwed up. And at least for okay, again, this could just be me, but often we are our own worst critics. And so if the bread doesn't come out, well, we've just ruined the whole thing. Absolutely not, because there's so much more to the process than the actual bread. And then sometimes, for whatever reason, it just does not proof, or it does not rise, and sometimes what those moments do is they gift you with the chance to do it again. So there was one time in Texas that our worship elder asked me to make bread for the communion table. I don't remember what it was. I don't remember if it was Easter. I don't remember if it was just a regular Sunday, whatever. I made the bread. It was the ugliest looking bread I've ever made. Uglier even than the first time. So I just threw it out. And I made it again. So that's like 6 hours of my day. The second part was incredibly stressful. I'm telling this story to the elder, and he goes, essentially, you're an idiot. Because the only person who would have been able to see that bread was you, because I was the one up there holding it. Everyone else in the congregation would have been going, yeah, he's just holding a loaf of bread, right? They have no idea what's in it. They don't even know if it's a real loaf of bread. They just know I'm breaking something. But I told him I knew it was not what I wanted. And so I needed to do it again. Because for me, I wouldn't have felt right breaking that loaf of bread. Yep. So to finish my story, though, I was at the end of my yeast. And so if I screwed up the second batch, there wasn't any more yeast to be had. This is at the beginning of the pandemic when you could not go get yeast. It just was not to be found. And so what I remember about that time is I was focused and I was present. And the whole experience was different. Again, I say that to say, and she says it in here, and Mick, you're pointing it out as well, most of the time, if we can get out of our own way, the process will be, who knows, but a heck of a lot more fruitful than when we're in our own way. Yep. Yes. Yeah, so it gives you a chance to put yourself in someone else's shoes. And that is never, ever, ever a bad thing. And we then get to experience the beauty of their creativity. Did anybody try the 6 strand? Right. So we get to experience, or did anyone make a circle loaf? So as we're going through this process and we get more familiar with it, branch out. Try a circle loaf. Try, who knows, and who knows what you'll come up with. If you go to her page again and you look at the photos, there's pictures of turtles, there's pictures of birds, there's pictures of, and it's fun to see, it's the same ball. We all have the same ball. And to see what other people do with it, there's just something beautiful about that process. Other thoughts about your first bake? Okay? Yeah. So those who did it together, how did you experience watching your partner do the parts they did? She told you what you were doing was wrong. Yep. Yeah. She said just typical husband-wife stuff, right? But it's like I told you when I talked about doing it with my mom. Really, really cool, but only after I stopped saying you're doing it wrong. And I let her do it. And there was just something cool about giving up that control, especially for me, which is really, really hard. I know it's shocking to you that I'm a control freak. Okay, any other thoughts about the baking experience? Paul? Okay, following the recipe. If you're not a, rule follower or whatever, that can be a hard thing to do, certainly. And it'll be interesting to see if you follow the recipe going forward. What's funny is if you do it time and time again, that you get to just know the recipe, and then if you leave something out, it's like, wait, something's wrong. Something's different. So sometimes the map is a really good help to go through the process. Good habits, just as hard to break as bad habits. Agree or disagree? Totally agree. Say more about that. What do you mean? Good habits, just as hard to keep, just as hard to break as bad habits. How many of us focus on our good habits? How many of us can name our good habits? How many of us keep a list of those good habits? Those things we do that feed us and enable us to survive and get from one day to the next. Okay? How many of us can list our bad habits without any thought? Some of us don't have any bad habits. How many of us again, without any thought, can throw out our good habits like it's nothing? So it's self-fulfilling prophecy, right? How we speak to ourselves matters. How we speak about ourselves matters. What we notice about ourselves matters. The stories we tell about ourselves matter. And if the stories we are telling over and over and over again are not our success stories, there is going to be something about us that is always unsettled. We can take it to the other extreme, sure enough. But a spiritual discipline is having a good sense, not just of our bad habits, but of our good ones as well, so that we know what we can keep working on. Most of us focus on our bad ones. If only I didn't do this, and I'm going to work really hard about not cussing. I'm going to work really hard about not driving offensively. I'm going to work virtually impossible to fix. But the more we work on our good habits, the more they become in our minds and our practice day after day after day, we're going to find our bad habits are not as pronounced. Tell a kid they are killing it in math. They are killing it in math. They are killing it in math, and pretty soon they'll be killing it in English. Tell a kid they suck in math, and they're going to. The stories we tell, how we talk about ourselves, how we notice things about ourselves matter. The goal, and we talked about this earlier, the goal is to be present, not stressed out. Amen? Hopefully, by the end of this, all of us will be present and not stressed in this process. I don't know what that looks like for you, but again, that is the hope. Making bread is a form of revolution. What does that mean? Okay, it's new, it's something different. How is that revolutionary? Yeah, but that's just different, right? Different is not necessarily revolutionary. What does it mean when she's saying, I'm on page 53. What does it mean when she is saying making bread is an act of revolution? Okay? It's kicking against the goats. I'm Southern, but I don't have that one. It's doing something different, but doing something different is pretty much the same thing Bob said. That's not necessarily revolutionary. Okay, it's making the intentional decision to do something different. That's different than just happing into doing something different. It is, in this state, making the intentional decision to be present. Maybe to put your phone down, to put your email away, to do whatever. It's making the intentional decision to bake bread with another so you experience community in a way that you may not have otherwise. I mean, it's a crazy sign of the times that we have more ways to be connected than ever before, and we are less connected as people. So to sit with someone in your kitchen and bake bread together, you have to be connected in ways you would not be otherwise. That is revolutionary because it's intentional. You may not have been intending to be a revolutionary, but what you did says in that moment, this time is different. It may not be better, but this time is different. And so there's hope in that. And there's potential in that. All these things that are beautiful. Baking bread is revolutionary. Other examples, other things she means by that.
Kind of a cell phone freak because in my business, cell phone is always important. In the day when my hand was plastered with my telephone, I couldn't answer the phone.
Yeah, so in the process of kneading, not enough flour in the mix, hands super sticky, telephone rings. Isn't there, in that moment, isn't that one of the great fears? What do? You can't just let it ring. But in today's time, right, you can't. And so to do that, I mean, that's different. If it's important, we can get in touch with them. If it's important, they'll leave a message. But we don't think like that most of the time. And so to stop and say, this is important now. And that'll be important in 5 minutes. But right now, this is important. There is something revolutionary about that. And what's interesting is if it's not on the telephone, in person. If someone comes and interrupts you and you don't have time for them in that moment because you're hand deep and you're kneading. At first, people don't know what to do with that. Because most of the time, we just stop. And it's annoying as hell half the time. But we just stop. Which means we're not gifting ourselves with the chance to finish what we're doing. And we're not gifting the other with our full attention because we're pissed. Can't you see I'm doing this? Or it'd be cool to invite them into it, right? Come get sticky too. But, it's funny when I'm doing it and I'm coming to the end because I only get help at the end. And that's when I'm putting in the chocolate chips for the boys. And the boys are really clear that I don't ever put enough in. And so it's, then I'm getting direction. Here, put this in. Here, put a little bit more in. Put a little bit. You can make this one with 4, and you can make that loaf smaller, right? I mean, that's when they're really curious about what's going on. If baking bread is revolutionary, what else should be revolutionary? Exactly. Yeah. I mean, the whole process for her was a personal form of revolution. I mean, it was a personal turnaround because she realized what she was doing was not sustainable. And again, the irony of all ironies is the way she fixed that was by adding another thing to her already busy schedule, right? But faith should be revolutionary. We should not be going through the motions. It should be affecting everything in our world. People should be different because of their time with us. Because we are transforming the world. Hopefully helping to usher in the kingdom. How often do we think of faith as revolution? Okay. Yeah, I mean, certainly our heritage influences how we approach anything. But as we are trying to live out our journeys, how many of us think of our faith as a revolution? I'm guessing not many of us. And so the question would be, what would it be for us to think about our faith as something that is totally turning the world upside down? Hopefully for the better. Yeah, let's not limit it. Let's not limit it. I mean, and I don't know if she's on, someone make sure you're following Facebook. If we get the chance to bake with her and we ask her, she will tell you she just wrote a book. That's all she was doing. But there are people all over the world who have baked with her, she has started her own little revolution. And so the question is, what would it be for us if that was our intention going into it? I mean, pretty stinking amazing the impact we could have. Just something to think about. So let's go into gathering your ingredients. Canola is neutral. It doesn't distract. Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Neutral? When I say that, what does that mean to you? It's a good thing? Okay. It just fulfills its purpose. So I think I told y'all this last week, did I not? I had only made with vegetable oil. And as I was reading the book again for us to talk about it, I remembered that she talked about canola oil. And so I was just out of vegetable oil, and so I went to the grocery store and bought both vegetable oil and canola oil. And when I made it this past week with the canola oil, my boys were like, this is different. What is different about the bread? It was lighter, it was better, and perhaps because it didn't distract in ways the vegetable oil did. So I was emailing her afterwards, and I said, all I could think about was how much better my challah would have been for the last 2 years if I had just followed the recipe. and her response was, try it again. Maybe you'll get it at the next bake, right? It's not a grade, it's the process, right? Try it again. Making challah for her, we've talked about this already, a gift to herself. What are those things we do to gift ourselves? How do we bless ourselves? A nap, okay. What else? What are those things we do to bless ourselves? Okay. Okay. So to lift up another, to sing praise songs. What else? Other things we do to gift ourselves. Walks on the beach. One of the beautiful things about living in this community is we've got this incredible resource. Absolutely. If you can't walk on the beach or just experience time on the water and go, okay, something big is going on, do it again. What else do we do to gift ourselves? Okay? Feeding people, certainly. What else? Other things we do to gift ourselves. Okay, volunteer. Give up time. That thing that is important and special. Come on in, welcome. That thing that is important and special to us. Other things we do to gift ourselves. There's water and cookies out in the lobby. If you want some, grab some. Other things we do to gift ourselves. But it is a selfish thing, right? I mean, she gave herself back time, and she continues to do so every week. For me, as I have gotten into this habit as well, it's one of my favorite times of the week. And so on those days that my Friday is taken and I don't find another day to do it, I'm annoyed. Because this is something that grounds me and centers me. It's every bit of selfish, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Because it allows me to be better for others and better in other ways. No, not at all. As I've told you, so the question is, at what point did this become a time that is a gift to myself? It was for me, it was probably a month, 6 weeks into it. And it started at that second bake, honestly. When I saw her on that virtual baking mix up the yeast thing, that was a game changer for me. Because I'm type A, I'm a perfectionist. I'm my own worst. If it's not perfect, all I can see are the flaws. And when I watched the expert screw up, the question that ran through my mind was, okay, what are you doing? right? You're missing something here. And it was a while before I figured it out. It was about that time, and it was probably a good 5-6 weeks into it, when Clay came down and said, let's put chocolate chips in that. And my first thought was, no, it's not in the recipe. You can't do that. And my second thought was, why the hell not? It's our bread. I can do whatever I want with it. And I've already screwed up 4 loaves anyway, so what's a fifth? But it's, it's seeing the joy for me and the hope and the expectation in others that it became something different for me. And so for now, it's a connection to my boys that they're both fixing to leave at some point, hopefully, that I'm going to lose. And so I'll bake bread 2-3 times a week because I know that window's closing. So when it became less about me and more about the process and more about others, it became a totally different thing. No, they're very interested in eating bread. They're not at all interested in making bread. They are very interested in eating bread. Perhaps. Perhaps when they're away they'll want to. I don't know. We will see. I just know that they're very interested in eating it. So, yeah, it's gone. It's gone. The beautiful thing, though, again, as we talked about in this, and as Dave, you're talking about, there's a mission component to this. What's been fascinating for me to see is to watch my boys, who have a little bit of competition in them regularly anyway, and for whatever reason, with things in particular like this, they live in scarcity. And so it's interesting to watch them get towards the end of the loaf. And you can see them go, okay, how much have I had and how much has... And Clay will go, all right, if there's any left in 2 hours, it's gone, right? So it's, there is that recognition that, okay, perhaps I've had more than my share, and there's others, and there needs to be enough to go around. But there's also that recognition that consistency, there'll be more next week. And if I really want more, he'll make more, right? So for me, it really took me getting out of the way of the whole process before it could become a joyful thing. Because as I talked about last week, after I screwed it up the first time, my whole focus was, I'm not screwing it up again. I'm not going to fail again. I'm a slow learner. It took me a while to get out of that. So, balance is the key to staying healthy. Yes? No? No. Okay, say more about that. No such thing as balance. No perfect balance, okay? So maybe imperfect balance is the key. So we'll go with that, right? So if perfect balance may not exist, I'm not willing to go there. If it may not exist, how do we strive to be as balanced as possible? What are those things that we do? What does that look like? Feels like those are rote answers. Those are rote answers, right? Those are the things that we know. What are those things we do to keep ourselves in balance, level, whatever word we want to use? Yep. So what she is saying is, in order to even think about balance, there has to be some sense of grounding spot so that we can then have something to hold on to in that moment. Is that a fair? Okay. I think it's important as we talk about balance is to realize it changes over time. I am the most time-rich person I know at this stage in my life. I could not have said that 15 years ago. I could not have said that 10 years ago. It changes, and what it means to be in balance, what it means to be whatever, what it means to be healthy differs from wherever we are in whatever stage of life we're in. When I was essentially a minister and a taxi driver for my kids, and a husband, and there was no way to even think about it. It was just survival. I mean, and if I was lucky, Becky and I saw each other sometime during the week. It's an easier stage for me today. So again, as we're talking about this, and we're talking about mission, and we're talking about gifting people food, I also think with that comes the responsibility of helping others and doing what we can to ease the burden of others too. Because I know what it's like to have been in survival mode. Hear me, our brothers and sisters in Ukraine are in a different kind of, when I'm using survival mode, I'm not using that, right? I get that there's a difference. But in that stage of life, I was, it literally felt like we're just trying to get out of today so we can get into tomorrow. And then tomorrow it was just, can we survive today and so we can get into tomorrow, right? There are obviously different levels of what it means to survive. Fair? Okay. I was like, what are you announcing? And
But you know what I'm saying? Just like you said, it varies based on one place. You can't.
so let me work on Mick's analogy. A year ago, Becky, Clay, and I, and 3 dogs moved to Florida. 2 months later, it was Becky, Clay, and I, 3 dogs, and my mother-in-law. 2 months later, it was Becky, Clay, and I, 3 dogs, a mother-in-law, and my other son. Our picture of what was going to be is not what is. Is that what you're saying? A little bit better? Megan, is that fair for... Food is medicine. Yes or no? How are we treating ourselves? As I'm drinking Diet Dr. Pepper. So there's a way to think about food as medicine and how we treat ourselves. One of it is, what are we sure enough putting in our bodies? And for those of us who are fortunate enough to control what we put in our bodies, we can choose this over that because of the stage of life we're in. The question becomes, are we treating ourselves as we should be, right? Part of it is food is medicine. We know that there are people in our world today, in our community today, who cannot eat, cannot therefore treat themselves. And so, we as a congregation have partnered with the Children's Hunger Project for the last 3-4 months, right? And we are doing what we can to help children at least experience something different. 3 churches ago, I was doing youth ministry, hanging out with teenagers all the time. It was glorious. I loved it. I was eating like a teenager. I was 32, 33, still relatively in good shape, all of those things. And my body said, this is not going to work for you anymore. But I didn't understand that. I just knew my body was not functioning. I go to the doctor, and the doctor says, dude, you're old. I said, I'm like 33. There's no way you can call me old. He goes, yes, but you're treating your body like you're 15, and you're not 15. And that was the first time in my life that concept began to make sense to me. What we put into ourselves affects how we are. We talked about it a few minutes ago, the stories we tell about ourselves. So it's not just the tangible things we put into ourselves, it's the intangible ones as well. That's food too. It's a spiritual form of food, but it's still food. And so part of being good stewards of these temples, whatever form that temple is in that God has given us, is to take seriously how we are treating that and how we are feeding ourselves. And part of what she is doing, and she's doing it from a medical perspective, and so she's bringing a different kind of knowledge into it, but hopefully it's getting us thinking. Maybe we cannot go to the extreme of your friend. My cousins, by marriage, sold everything, went out and bought a farm in, just south of Ocala, and now they are doing all that on their own. It is so strange because she was the prissiest city girl ever. I mean, spoiled, rotten, whatever, in a good way. I mean, her parents clearly loved her and provided. And now, she's living out in the dirt and the stuff, and I just look at her and go, who are you? But she is living her best life, and she's clear of it because she's taken on that aspect in a different way, and it's fun to watch her. Yeast is a team player. As you were making bread this week, did you watch the whole yeast thing bubbling up and all of that? Is that not a cool thing? So I don't know how y'all do it. I do it every time in one of 3 or 4 beer mugs because they are the only clear glasses we have in the house. So I can see it start and I can see it bubble over. And as it gets to the top of that beer mug, I know it's time to pour it in. That's my clock now. So going back to what was this like at the beginning, she says in the book, let it go for 10 minutes. Well, I set the kitchen timer for 10 minutes. And by God, she said 10 minutes. It was going to be 10 minutes. And not only did she say it, she wrote it down for all eternity, right? 10 minutes. Well, sometimes it's 7 minutes. Sometimes it's 15. Sometimes I forget about it and go, oh, hell, I got to put it in. But always it's just seeing that science experiment happen. There is just something really cool and just awesome about that process. Yeah. So as you're watching that, what's running through your mind? What's, for those of us who got the joy of watching it happen? Next time I might get to see this. So yeah, there's a little bit of Frankenstein. It's alive. There's just something cool about that, right? And there's something fun about it. Other thoughts as that's happening? Yeah, the word is relieved. Part of it is because you know you're doing something right, right? And relieved because you know that there's the possibility that something even better is going to come out of it. I mean, there's an excitement that comes from it. And there's something really cool about that process. Those who let it rise and saw their dough rise, how often did you check it? Not at all, okay. You checked it 4 times. So you checked it 4 times. I check it all the time. It's fun. I mean, it's fun to do. It's fun to have something to hope for. And it's fun to see it grow and to see it grow and to see it grow. I mean, for me, that's an exciting part. Relief that it's doing that. So hope it doesn't go over the bowl. What a great problem to have. I mean, oh my gosh, if you have the chance of having light and big fluffy loaves, how awesome would that be? So one of the things that in this process, it sounds so strange to say it now, but it was a sure enough loss. So for probably the first 2 years, once I got going, I used one bowl. And it was just that bowl. And we didn't use it for anything else. That was the bread bowl. And so one Friday as I'm washing it, it broke. And I remember just looking at it going, oh my God. And something inside of me, I mean, literally just felt like a loss. I have a bowl that I use here, but it's not the same. So I haven't found the bowl again. But it'll be interesting. As you keep doing it, I wonder if, I got to use this spoon, or I have to use this bowl, or I have to. And I'm telling you, losing that, the process is different. And so I go to stores when Becky and I actually shop together, which is not often. And I will go look at bowls to say, does that one look right? Does it feel right? So I haven't bought another bowl yet, but I will at some point. So, Paula.
In the summertime, when we would take kids on mission trips, we were out in the middle of nowhere, so we would make our own bread for various assorted things. And so you got the opposite problem sometimes is you're leaving it rise and things get really hectic and busy, you can't get to it, and it is overflowing that bowl. So you just throw it back in and punch it down, and it's really forgiving. It's kind of wonderful.
It's very forgiving. That's a great way to talk about that. Yeah, certainly. There is that part, and she talks about it, getting the yeast and whatever you're going to do it in, the mixture, and then setting aside and letting it do its thing. Did that strike any of y'all? This concept of just letting something do its thing. Is that an easy thing for you, a hard thing? Oh, it's a hard thing. Made you think of meditating? Say more. Okay. Say more about it's not an easy thing. Yeah. But you're not doing nothing. But I think that's the thing, right? And again, for those of us in this setting who are constantly doing, even the retired folk who are busier than when they were working, right? It's not doing nothing. But the concept of letting something else do its thing. If you've ever parented, frickin' impossible. If you've ever loved another and wanted something for them, frickin' impossible, right? Because you can sit there and watch them go, "You're killing me." Can't you just see that this is... Again, I haven't found my therapist here in Florida. Perhaps it's just me, but... I mean, one of the greatest gifts we can give another is the freedom to do their thing. Provided it's healthy, provided it's part of the communal thing. So that's an interesting thing in the process, right? I mean, so your question was, when did it become a spiritual thing for me? As you are, hopefully you will continue to bake bread, right? Hopefully it's not just a 1 week thing. Chris, I did it, I ain't doing it again. Hopefully, at the very least, I mean, Easter's only 4 weeks away. Hopefully you give it 4 weeks. But it'll be interesting to see, as this is happening and becoming part of your ritual, what are the other things that it gives birth to? And it could be, all right, you now have time to go to this because I'm occupied at this time. Or you can, or, you know. I mean, it'd be interesting to be self-aware enough to track that stuff of, okay, I'm baking bread, but also these things are happening. And perhaps we as a system needed these things. And if I'm not going to bake bread after Easter, what can we do to let these things continue because we are better for them? Hopefully we are self-aware enough to ask those questions. What else for the good of the cause tonight? I have enjoyed the pictures y'all have sent me. Feel free to keep sending them if you like. I think for the DBR, Paula is going to put some together. Betsy's going to put some together as they're forming it. Betsy, if y'all have not met her, please come by the church office and meet her. She's our new admin. Good lady. And so the congregation will see some of the fruits or maybe some of the mess-ups of our labor. And so, feel free to send those on. You don't have to. It's entirely up to you. Anything else? Okay. Next week, we are looking together at the first big mix through the second big mix. Smaller reading, pages 97 to 118. She's part lawyer? I don't believe so. I think she's all doctor. Oh, we'll talk about the sidebars a little bit next week because I think they're cool. Let's pray. Again, God, we just thank you for this day and this time and this chance to be together, to talk about what it is and to think about how we might be better and then help your world be better. We thank you for the freedoms that we have and the opportunities we have to serve you. And we ask that you would just stop us in the moment and let us think about ways we might be present for ourselves, for others, and for you. Because it is in being present that we offer some of the greatest presents to each other. Thank you for your Son, who is our hope and our joy. And we ask, Lord, that in his name we might help others live life to its fullness. In your name we pray. Amen.